Fred Richani. In this interview, we chat with acclaimed Palestinian Tatreez artist Lina Barkawi, who discusses her culture, her art, and activism. Thank you so much for your time. How's everything going?
It's good. It's good. Thank you for having me. I know that with everything happening right now, it's like the worst time, but I'm good. Thank you for asking.
But you've been making waves on Instagram, not just for your incredible designs, but also your advocacy for Palestinians, as well as the great education you've been providing regarding Palestinian culture. In terms of Tatreez itself, the Palestinian embroidery, how was that introduced to your life? And when did you decide to say, you know what, I can make a business out of this?
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I'm passionate to say the least. So you might have to stop me at some point. But yeah, so my name is Lina. I have been doing Tatreez or Palestinian specific embroidery for about, I don't know, maybe 5 years now. And the way it got introduced to me, so originally I'm half Palestinian, half Panamanian, and I grew up very much in that identity of being of mixed cultures and mixed backgrounds. And it's actually really ironic because my Panamanian mother was the one who taught me how to embroider. And so my mom's side, who are not at all related to the Middle East, they're born and raised in the country of Panama. And but I come from a long line of seamstresses in Panama. And so I actually picked up cross stitch very, very young, maybe around like 12 or 13 years old. And I hadn't really put two and two together until much, much later. So I had been practicing cross stitch, and I actually have some friends from high school who send me random photos of like small pieces that I had made for them over the years. And it's funny because I associate myself now with Tatreez and very specific type of embroidery. And I've actually been doing it for a minute. And so 5 years ago, I was in between graduating a business program and starting a new job. And my Panamanian mother, had found this class on Palestinian embroidery by Wafa Kanaim, who's of Tatreez and Tea, for those who don't know her. And she had been hosting in-person workshops prior to COVID. And so my mom thought it would be a great mother-daughter experience. And then we get there and I actually know how to do it, which is so funny. And I hadn't really put two and two together that I had been able to do this beautiful art form that, and I just hadn't considered it. And so I left that class, and I got home and I just saw all the Tatreez in the house. And I was like, you know what? I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I was like, I just decided to pick it up. And so for those who don't know, what's really unique about Palestinian embroidery is that there's this whole library of motifs that holds very significant value in Palestinian culture. This is something that has been practiced by Palestinian women for centuries. And they use embroidery as a way to document their surroundings, their experiences. Prior to 1948, it was very much a form of individual expression, artistic expression. And so these women would create these incredibly beautiful items. And the most famous place or placement of Tatreez is on the national dress, which is the Thobe. And so very, very early in my like Tatreez specific journey, I knew I wanted to create a Thobe of my own. And I just kind of did it. I had no idea what I was doing. And so it was very like haphazard. And it took me 2 years. It was very painful, lots of tears and, blood, sweat, and tears, all of the above. But it was really beautiful because I didn't realize it in the moment, but I was actually creating the dress that I would get married in. And that is also something that is tied to Palestinian culture. And so I find it so beautiful to be able to connect to my heritage in this way when I'm not there, when I don't speak the language fluently. Like this is when I feel, this a little bit of an imposter syndrome because I am only half, Palestinian. This was such a beautiful way to just connect so much as myself, as like Lina specifically. And I knew I wanted to share that with the world. And so that was when I decided to launch Lina's Thobe as like more of a business idea. And so my whole goal is to help Palestinians in the diaspora and in Palestine, if they are interested in creating their own creations that not only ties them to their culture, but ties them to themselves and helps them express themselves using this tool of Palestinian embroidery. So that's kind of my whole mission, I guess, in this business. But I'll pause there before I like go on and on.
That's beautifully said and incredible. And yeah, you've been doing this for a while. And then obviously you've really kind of developed the skill the last several years and everything. But I got to ask you in regards to that, when you started doing the embroidery and especially taking it more seriously, you mentioned the motifs. Were there already kind of some motifs and subliminal messages in there before, or are you kind of more deliberate about that now, given everything's going on and you preserving your culture?
Yeah, no. So I learned I mean, honestly, from that first class that I took with my mom in person, like Wafat had introduced me to this idea that motifs can be used to tell stories. And so after that, I started doing my own research, and there's quite a few books out there that have documented the motifs, where their origins lie, like in terms of you can literally trace a woman's village by the motif that she used on her dress. And so I was able to learn a lot about that as well. And I ended up doing my whole master's thesis on Tatreez as well. So I really delved deep into it. So when I was designing my own thobe, that was very intentional, was I wanted it to be something that meant something to me, using the meanings that had been documented by all of these women over the years. And so on my dress, it's very much a Lina's, like really, when I say Lina's thobe, like it's like literally my thobe, because all of the motifs that I chose are super intentional. So I have one that represents my curly hair. I have one that references my name. I have one that really also calls out my mom, because she's a huge part of my journey. And so I have something that's actually not Palestinian on my dress, which is an orchid that represents Panama. And so it was very much, the colors were things that I chose intentionally. And I also had this idea of my grandmother, my Panamanian grandmother, also gave me this idea of like thinking about the dress as like the earth, where like the bottom of the dress is the land. And as you get closer and closer to like my neck, you're getting higher and higher. So you're going to the sky, you're hearing, like feeling water. And so all of the placement also was very intentional. And that was mimicking the practice of Palestinian women before me. So 100% was intentional. And now it's just part of the DNA.
That's pretty incredible. And I know we obviously can't self-care way out of what's going on and everything, but how has it been for you as a coping mechanism, not just the last 60 or so days, but really just in life? I mean, there's been a lot going on in this world.
Absolutely. I mean, with COVID, I think it was one of the things that got me through COVID in general as well. But yeah, over the last 2 months in particular, I think a lot of us felt very stunned and, just like, it's not surprising. And yet it is, like, now it's surprising. I mean, to be perfectly honest, like the absolute atrocities that are happening now have never been done before in this fashion and to this extent. And I find myself, I get some panic attacks every once in a while. Like I'll witness something on Instagram and it literally gives me nightmares. And so there are moments when I have to actually very intentionally return back to the things that ground me. And what grounds me is moving my hands and moving my fingers. And what's beautiful, I think, about Palestinian embroidery in particular is it's super geometric in nature. It's super repetitive in nature. And so you don't really have to think too much. Whereas the type of cross stitch that I grew up learning was a lot of counting. Like, it was meditative in its own right, but it required a little bit of thinking, because you had to count. It was not geometric. It wasn't repetitive. And so you had to really focus on the pattern itself and translate it into the embroidery. Whereas Palestinian embroidery is very, very repetitive. So it's just in nature, this meditative practice. And so I found a lot of solace in returning to my embroidery during this time. And then I think there's also something about community as well. And so part of the tradition of Palestinian embroidery is practicing it amongst others. You historically, you learn it from your mother, from your grandmother, from the women in your village. Historically, you even across other times of absolute tragedy, like 1948, 1967, the Intifadas, you found that immediately coming after those moments, those ruptures in Palestinian space, a lot of the women are coming together and they're doing and practicing the embroidery together. And there's something super peaceful about finding people who are like you, who are experiencing the same trauma, experiencing the same pain. And that has also been something that I've returned to over and over and over again over the last 2 months, where if it's, in some cases it's been virtual because we're kind of spread out all over the place. But we actually also hosted our first in-person Tatreez retreat. And this was done in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We had actually been planning this for about 9 months, and we didn't know that 2 weeks into what's happening in Gaza, we would be meeting in person. And we debated back and forth about whether or not we should hold the retreat. And I think what ended up happening is everyone was seeking so much comfort in each other that it was the best thing that could have happened, I guess, during this time. And so being in person as well was really, really powerful. And it's not because we're all Palestinian, it's because we're all Palestinian practicing this art form. So I think it's definitely in many, many ways. Just a huge place for healing, for comfort, for just grounding yourself and letting your mind release and just not think so much and not be so absorbed in the painful things that are happening on the ground.
That's so well said, and thank you so much for all that insight. And I'm so glad you mentioned community, because I was going to ask you about that, because I saw online that not only are you doing amazing things with your work in general, but you're also educating people, and you are fostering communities, not just with retreats, but with courses as well. And from what I understand, 100% of those proceeds are actually going to assist Palestinians in terms of mental health resources. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Hakini is this beautiful startup in Palestine focused on mental health. They've been around prior to what's happening in Gaza, but after this all happened, they expedited their efforts towards providing psychological first aid to the people of Gaza. And I had heard about them through another organization that I'm incredibly fond of, which is called Build Palestine. And I was reading kind of their mission and this campaign that they were running, and it just felt so right to be connected to that in some way, because for me, I find Tatreez to be my almost like, I don't know, psychological first aid is a very strong term for me to use for myself, but it's something that I find peace in doing. And I felt that there was something really unique about connecting the experience as someone in the diaspora witnessing all of this happening, and the experience of someone on the ground going through this type of trauma day in and day out. And so I wanted to do something, very meaningful, and I had been thinking about launching a Tatreez 101 course for a while. I had already filmed the content like months ago, and I just hadn't actually launched it. And so I thought this is a really great way for me to just get it out into the world for people to use. And so that's what I ended up doing, is I ended up launching very quickly, and all 100% of the proceeds did go to Hakini's crowdfunding campaign. And they were able to actually meet their target because of this donation, which is fantastic. And so they were able to actually like kick off and launch, and it's absolutely live, this toll-free hotline for people in Gaza to call into for immediate psychological first aid, which is beautiful. I actually just got off the phone with one of the co-founders of Hakini today, and just hearing the updates was really beautiful. And I think it's interesting because now that I've launched the course and I'm getting some initial feedback, people are saying like, this has been so soothing to like do something, like just do anything, because we feel so helpless in the diaspora. And the art form of Tatreez is like, it actually creates this beautiful thing that you create that you can actually look at and remember and think about. And I think that being able to offer people the ability to create is in of itself a form of healing and a form of just feeling like you've done something and done something for your people. And so I'm really happy that it was successful.
Great work. I want to commend you. And yeah, that's a fantastic cause as well, and everything. So definitely, if you want to learn Tatreez, join Lina's course. It goes towards a good cause, and you learn something, you foster some community. That is fantastic. Now, I reached out to my community, a lot of people who are, Palestinian, Lebanese, Syrian, from MENA, who have a lot of different questions they wanted me to ask you, if that's all right. Normally, we like to keep this kind of lighthearted. Obviously, I know there's a lot of real serious stuff going on, but we'd love to just learn a little bit more about you and the culture, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Great. First question related to your designs. What's your favorite design you've done up to this point?
All of them are really beautiful. So, I mean, obviously my Thobe is like my pride and joy. I want to die in this dress. Okay. It was a lot of work, and I'm just so proud of this dress. But I'll tell you, the one that surprised me that I liked a lot was this pomegranate design that I did. So I have a friend of mine who's a really good friend who's obsessed with pomegranates, and there was like this fad going around of like an image within an image. And so I decided, because there is a pomegranate motif in Palestinian embroidery. So I thought, let me try to figure this out. So it was a lot of like design pain because like the platform that I'm using is not the best for this type of designing, but I was able to do it. And when I finally finished the design, I wasn't that convinced by it, to be honest, but I was like, you know what, forget it. I've already like put in all this time. I'm going to create it. I'm going to give it to him, and it's done. Like, it's over. And I actually had a very hard time parting with some of my work. So I was very like, I'll never give away my work. I'll never sell it. Like, it's so much work. There's never going to be enough. But I find there's actually something really nice about giving something to someone that you care about. And so this one actually turned out to be really beautiful. I'm not really, I didn't expect it to be that nice, or that I would like it that much. And then I got a really nice frame for it as well, which is kind of put the cherry on top. So that one is the one that surprised me the most that I liked.
What's your favorite Palestinian dish?
Oh, malfouf. Oh, and any day I will eat malfouf all day, every day. It's the one dish I hate making, but I love it so much. So
For any of the non-Palestinians and non-Arabs watching, listening to this, what is malfouf?
malfouf is basically stuffed cabbage leaves. And I eat it like my teta makes a really good version of malfouf, and it's just it's stuffed with rice and ground lamb or ground beef. And it's very tangy and just delicious. It's fantastic.
Now, we definitely want to help support the community in culture. Besides Linas Thobe, what's your favorite Palestinian-owned business in New York? Or it could be in America. But if we have one in New York too, we'd love the New York theme.
Oh, that's a good question. Palestine-owned business. That's a tough one. I don't necessarily have one in New York, although there's quite a few good restaurants in New York if people are interested. But I really like Zaindi. So Zaindi, it's Zeindee. She has an Etsy shop. She has really cool designs, and she does like stickers and just other types of merchandise. But I love her art form or artwork. It's really fantastic. I got a calendar done by her from my sister-in-law actually one Christmas, and that's how I got introduced to her stuff. So her stuff is really cool on Etsy. She's based in Seattle. And then non-US based, I am obsessed with this artist based in Germany. Her name is Palestinian Artist on Instagram. She does some really beautiful paintings. And I had a couple commissioned by her where she did two canvases, and it was like half of a woman on each canvas, and they were basically like facing, like it was the same person, but they had two versions of them, and like one was wearing a Palestinian thobe, the other one was wearing a Panamanian traditional pollera dress, and so I have those like together as well on the wall. So that she's one of my favorite artists.
You talked about community. You had that successful retreat in Santa Fe. You're doing these courses and everything. But of course, a lot of talk is also about the children. Now they're affected not just in Gaza, but all the Palestinian children around the world. Would you be open to doing any kind of in-person workshops on these children, not just to help them learn to skill and preserve their history, but also help them with their trauma?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. I am hosting a couple of workshops in the next couple of weeks live, and I will have an intake form actually on my website shortly. So if there are people who are interested in hosting me as someone to lead a workshop, I'm 100% interested. I haven't worked with children, so just to be super transparent, but I'm incredibly open to it. And I think as someone who learned younger, they're more than capable of picking up the practice, and so it'll be really fun to help teach them.
For any non-Palestinians watching or listening to this, are there any words or vocabulary or any ways that they can be a better, I hate to use the word ally, but any ways they can be a better ally or a better supporter of the Palestinian cause?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I have a day job, and it's something that I struggle with, not struggle with, but it's something that I'm very conscious of and intentional at work as well. I think it's really important, especially with the current climate and the U.S. and certain laws that have been going into effect, is to educate yourself on this idea that being anti-Zionist is not being anti-Semitic. So that's like an incredibly powerful and strong thing to learn and understand. And then I also think that there are really I'm also a big reader. So for me, I learn a lot about people's experiences through fiction. And I think there are quite a few incredible novels that can help you understand, as someone who's never been to Palestine, what it means to be an occupied people. This is something that I struggle with constantly because we use the word all the time. It's the Palestinian Palestinian territories. It's used in the UN, it's used globally, but nobody understands that being occupied as a people is it's just wild. Like, I mean, it's absolutely crazy the types of things that people are going through besides what's happening in Gaza. Like, what's happening in Gaza is so clearly wrong, but it's been wrong for a very, very long time. And so I highly encourage all of the non-Palestinians or people who are unfamiliar with the Palestinian experience to really just dive into it, explore novels if that works for you, explore movies. There are fantastic movies on Netflix that help showcase the day-to-day experience of being Palestinian in historic Palestine, and not just in the West Bank or Gaza, but as a Palestinian in 1948. Palestine. And yeah, I think there's a ton there, but the big words that I would encourage people to educate themselves on, and not just necessarily just be able to define them, but be able to understand the experience of that word, are, you know, anti-Zionist versus anti-Semitic, occupation, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, settler colonialism. These are big words, but there's a lot that needs to be understood by them. And I think, unfortunately, the English language doesn't do a very good job at really connecting the word with the experience. Because I think if people understood the experience, they would be 100% behind the word. So anyways, I'll pause there. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. That's fantastic insight in education and everything. And you mentioned too about novels. You also have an Instagram for literature, where you
Yeah, it's a
recommend
little.
where you recommend a lot of great books. So I know if you recommend a lot of great books, it's hard to narrow it down into like one or two. But are
Yeah.
there a couple that anybody should check out right this second?
Minor Detail is fantastic. Minor Detail is a newer novel. It was just translated a couple years ago. It's fantastic. I'm also reading, I haven't finished it, but I am also reading The Time of White Horses, and I'm very much enjoying this novel. It's a bit bigger, but it's really quite great. And then if you feel like, if you're up for a challenge, Gate of the Sun is fantastic, but it is tough. I mean, it took me a couple months, and a couple months of like really focused reading, but it's absolutely crazy how much it covers. Like the breadth of this book is fantastic. So yeah, those would be the ones that off the top of my head. There's so many though. There's so many incredible authors.
Why should people check out Linas Thobe?
Because when you figure out how to learn Tatreez, you will fall in love with it. It will give you so much peace. It'll connect you to your heritage if you're Palestinian. And it's just beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful. I highly recommend everyone and their mother to explore this art form, because it has given me so much life over the last few years. And this is just the beginning. So.
Well, Lina, we really do appreciate your time. You do fantastic work. You preach an amazing message. I love your combination of just beautiful designs, artwork, education, advocacy, all wrapped into one. So much respect to you for all that you're doing and continue to do. In terms of in the future, anywhere we can find, I know you mentioned your courses, but just to get it all out there, the floor is yours. Is there anywhere we can find you online, and where can we find you next?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm at Linas Thobe on Instagram. My website is www.linasthobe.com. Yeah, I mean, I think for right now, you'll see that I've launched the first Tatreez 101 course, but I am really excited for what's to come in 2024. So if you're interested in creating a Thobe, that is my goal, is to help all Palestinian women in the diaspora learn how to create a Thobe if they want to. So from zero to Thobe, I'm here for you. So that'll be coming up very, very soon in 2024.